You're someone with a vision for your practice, for your side hustle, and for your personal journey. But when it comes to establishing your path on how to get to where you want to be with your practice, things get a little messy. You're also someone who'd prefer to go in person instead of to groups and listening to everyone else's story. To me, it sounds like you could benefit from one-on-one consulting with our experienced practice of the practice consultants. From $5.95 a month and up, you can work with a consultant that will give you more direction and practical tried and tested tips matched to you and your goals. For more information, visit practiceofthepractice.com/apply. Again, that's practiceofthepractice.com/apply. This is the Practice of the Practice podcast with Joe Sanok, session number 1218. I'm Joe Sanok, your host, and welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast. I am so excited to have you here. A lot of the folks that come in that are some of these kind of top listened to podcasts, we then reach out to them and ask them to be experts in regards to our Ask the Expert within our membership community. And literally just a few minutes ago, I wrapped up one of those Ask the Experts, and it was just amazing. It was so much fun. We were talking about trauma and our bodies and our brains. As we do that, it was with Nicole Sachs, who back in episode 1177 was talking about working with chronic illness. To see all these members getting really excited about the work and the clinical work and deepening their practices, it's one of those things that's so exciting in these communities to just dig deeper through education and connection with each other. If you're not in our membership, you're going to want to check that out over at practiceofthepractice.com/membership. We have a track for you depending on your phase of practice. So if you're just getting going, that's our next level practice track. If you have a sustainable solo practice and you're pretty sure you don't want a group, we have our sustainable solo practice track. We have our group practice launch track and our group practice boss track. So no matter where you're at, we have a community for you within there. And you get access to just all the teachings, over 30 e-courses. You get access to, I think, 3 or 4 live meetings every single week. So it's something you definitely are going to want to check out if you want to grow your practice. We love helping you build a thriving practice you absolutely love. Well, I can't wait to have this conversation today with Sarah Baldwin, who is a somatic experiencing practitioner and expert in the field of trauma resolution. She's a member of the world-renowned polyvagal theory training team and has trained clinicians around the world in nervous system interventions through the use of holistic somatic trauma healing. She helps people get unstuck and step into the lives they desire. She incorporates nervous system regulation, attachment work, and parts and inner child work into her courses and programs, which serve thousands of people from all over the world. Sarah, welcome to the Practice of the Practice podcast.
Thank you so much for having me here, Joe, and thank you everyone for listening and tuning in.
Yeah. Well, when you entered into kind of the field of counseling, were you thinking that this was like the work that you wanted to do, or did you kind of discover that along the way?
Yeah, for me, it was the work. I knew very early on that it's the work I wanted to do, and that came from my own lived experience. I have a complex trauma history, and I spent a lot of time in my early 20s in traditional psychodynamic and talk therapy. And there was, of course, so much benefit to that. And it was truly, for me, the first place of experiencing a safe, secure attachment and container and all of those wonderful things that come from it. And there were so many limitations in terms of healing the trauma that I experienced and bringing resolution to that. And of course, that means regulating of my nervous system and parts work and all of that. So anyway, I hit a wall, and through just devouring so much information out there, I was just looking for any way that I could possibly find to help me out of my experience, including chronic illness. I found somatic work, and it changed my life in quite a rapid way, in a timeline that was really unexpected for me, and really opened up living, opened up the experience of being able to really be present to life itself. And so that's what then led me down the path of I want to help as many people as possible to also have that experience and really gain the take the intangible, because I think so much of the time the healing process, so much of it's invisible, as is trauma. And so if to the layperson, it can feel so elusive. And so for me, a part of my practice, which years ago was an individual practice and then became the programs I do now, it was really important to me to make it really tangible and practical for people. And so yeah, my own lived experience led me down the path of a career in somatics.
Mm. Now we're getting more and more therapists, coaches, even just the average non-clinical person listening to this show. What terms, as we talk about relationships and we talk about just the nervous system, are there terms that we need to make sure that we just start with to be on the same page before we dig in? Like I know what parts work is, but like, maybe that's something, therapists learned about in grad school 10 years ago. Are there things like that that you want to make sure that we're just on the same page before we dig into talking about regulating our nervous system to have better relationships?
For sure. So, well, I'd love for us today to talk a little bit about the intersection of polyvagal theory, which covers an understanding of our nervous system, and I'll explain that in a moment. So, the intersection of that, the intersection of Bowlby's attachment theory, so how we relate to other beings and why we show up in relational containers the way that we do, and then parts. And IFS is a internal family systems is a wonderful modality around parts, but of course inner child work is really the same thing. So just to first just give a quick introduction to each of those in case they're new to anyone, and then talk about the interconnectivity of all of them. So, in terms of polyvagal theory, this is really about our autonomic nervous system. Our autonomic nervous system is subcortical, so obviously that means below the cortical thinking brain, and lives in our bodies. And the primary job of our autonomic nervous system is to keep us safe and alive at all costs. It's evolved actually for 500 million years to do that. The oldest branches, as I said, 500 million years old. A newer one is 300, our sympathetic nervous system, and then our ventral vagal complex is 200 million years old. So it's a really wise system. And as I named, the number one job it has is to keep us safe and alive at all costs. Now, this nervous system, I think of it like a vehicle that we inhabit. And the thing is, we learn so many things in our lifetime, so many things in our schooling. I think about learning trigonometry and calculus and about cumulus clouds and state flowers, and yet nobody taught me about, or any of us of my age or older, about this system that lives in our bodies that is responsible for our entire lived experience. So what we know now, and neuroscience confirms for us, is that our autonomic nervous system creates at any given moment every thought that we have. So thoughts are essentially symptoms of what's going on in our nervous system. Now, just to go backwards for a moment, there are 6 states in our autonomic nervous system, 3 states of regulation and 3 states of dysregulation. Essentially, a state is a full lived experience. So it's almost like being in a place or being in a country or a city. Everything around us is a result of what state we're in our entire experience. So there's only 6 of them. And regulation is what happens when our nervous system thinks we're safe. Dysregulation is what happens when our nervous system thinks we're in danger. So one of those 6 states is what we're all experiencing right now and at any given moment. And that state, as I just named, each state has an entirely different flavoring of what life is like. So the thoughts are a result of the state. They'll be different depending on the state we're in. Our nervous system in states also create our feelings. So every feeling we have, joy, aliveness, openness, curiosity, expansion, or anxiety, worry, frustration, fear, terror, rage, apathy, hopelessness, feeling shut down, depression, dissociation, all of those are a result of what state we're in. It also creates our sensations. So being open, energized, expanded, warm, or rigid, tense, racing heart, butterflies in our stomach, numb. All of that is a result of our nervous system. This one's a real kicker. Every time, I've said this 10,000 times, but it still surprises me, or it excites me, is that our nervous system creates every behavior we have ever had. So everything we've ever done or inhibited is the result of what's going on in our nervous system. It also creates our perception of self, perception of others in the world around us. So literally, our entire lived experience is the result of this nervous system. And if no one taught us about this, because certainly, again, it's not something that is public knowledge yet fully, what occurs is this vehicle that we inhabit or inhabits us, if we don't understand it, it's as if we're thrown in the back seat and it takes over on cruise control. I live in Los Angeles and we have these self-driving cars now called Waymo cars. And, you get in it and it drives itself. So if you don't understand your nervous system, that means you're not in the driver's seat of it. Someone has to be in the driver's seat. And so if we aren't in the driver's seat, it throws us in the back seat and then it makes choices and decisions for us based on what it thinks is safe. Now, our nervous system has, which lives in our midbrain, we all have this internal database or computer system. And that database has every lived experience we've ever had essentially inside of it. We don't have to remember that. Like procedural memory, it's implicit memory. We don't have to remember it all procedurally. They're all inside of there. The good things, the bad things, and the traumatizing things. And so the way the nervous system works is it has the autonomic nervous system, is it has a front line of defense called neuroception, term coined by Stephen Porges. Neuroception essentially is our threat detector. And the threat detector's job is to look out into the world or internally, that's called interoception, to see if we're safe or not. And it has three silos to decide. Is that safe? Is that dangerous? Is that life-threatening? And so the way that it decides is by resourcing or looking to this internal database or computer system. I mean, we are so exquisitely well working in terms of our ability to evolve and survive. So the thing with the threat detector and the database is it doesn't look for identical matches necessarily. It picks up on flavorings of things. And so if it sees something in our current life, it's every millisecond, that's 1,000 milliseconds in a second. So it's constantly looking out to the world and saying, is that safe, dangerous, or life-threatening? Is that safe, dangerous, or life-threatening? And it picks up on the most subtle cues. So I'll just give some quick examples. Let's say that somebody gets a text from a friend that says, hey, do you have time to talk later? I just want to talk about, something in our dynamic that's just been on my heart, and I just want to have a conversation about it. So it looks to the database and it says, okay, what information do I have on conflict or on challenging conversations or confrontation? And it will quickly look to our entire lived experience. And let's say it looks to our childhood. And when arguments happened in my childhood or ruptures occurred, maybe love was withheld or I was harmed in a particular way or people left. So in that moment, my threat detector will say that's dangerous based on past lived experience. And so no longer is it only responding to my present day, it's responding to the past. And in that moment, it says, okay, this isn't safe. So I need to use one of the 3 states of dysregulation in order to navigate this experience and ensure my survival. And so all of a sudden, I'm not seeing my loving, compassionate, safe, wonderful friend who's really understanding and doesn't withhold love and doesn't do all of those things. I'm seeing, let's say, my caregiver. And so all of the sudden in that moment, it's essentially like I've traveled time and I'm having the same autonomic response or felt sense in my nervous system that I had back then. And I might feel small and scared and out of control. And I have the same behaviors arise of self-protection that I had back then in the present moment. And so this is how our nervous system functions and works all the time. And I say this a lot when working with people. Think of it like if this is a vehicle, there's roads of life in front of us. And so meaning options for us to take, roads for us to go down. And let's say, there are some roads that we really desire, like fulfillment in a relationship or embodying our calling fully or adventuring more, traveling more, or calling in a partner that we deeply desire. And then there are these other roads, and I call them the roads of safety. And so these are roads that our nervous system is saying, based on past experience, I think living this version of life is going to be safer because nothing about this reminds me of danger in the past. And so a lot of us are going down roads that aren't necessarily roads that our truest self, soul self, highest self, just self and IFS desire, but they're the roads that our nervous system is picking for us because we're not in the driver's seat. And so practically speaking, that looks like, not starting that private practice, even though I feel really called to, because it feels dangerous to take risks, to get things wrong, to ask for help, to be seen more, all of that. Or in my relationships, I am not leaving something that really isn't serving me anymore because my nervous system is saying it's not safe to leave. Or I'm not traveling in the way I want to in my life or exploring in the way I want to. I'm living a smaller life than I feel called to because that's what my nervous system thinks is safe. And these roads that I actually want to go down are more often than not, they have flavorings of things that were once dangerous or inhibited in the past. So let's say, for example, I want a relationship where I can have deep intimacy, where I can expose myself and lean on someone and let myself be fully seen. And if those things weren't historically safe, my nervous system, this threat detector, and the whole autonomic nervous system is going to keep me from those things. And so I say this a lot, but nervous system regulation work is really the foundation of all healing. It's also the foundation of living the life that we are here to live. And if we don't understand the system, it is literally making choices for us based on what it thinks is safe. And so that's really foundational work. And then just to connect into this interconnectivity to attachment theory, attachment theory, there's so many great books on it. And yet at the same, meaning how we relationally connect, most of them are from a cognitive lens. Now, what we know to be true is the vehicle responsible for how we attach, so how we relate to other human beings, is our autonomic nervous system. So, for example, what we know from Bowlby's work and Diane Poole Heller's work, who's also, I think, a real pioneer in attachment theory work, is that the way that we relate to other human beings, the blueprint for that is laid in our earliest childhood experiences. So how we were related to. Now, I just want to go through here that the connection or correlation between these two different subsets of mental health and healing and these different really modalities is that when we're born, we don't have the ability to self-regulate. So meaning our autonomic nervous system on its own is not able to come into regulation when in distress, essentially meaning a baby who's in distress cannot regulate themselves. And I say this a lot, but the like the cry it out method that was done for our, my generation, our generation or older, is really not effective at all. In fact, it creates deeper dysregulation because a baby, when in distress, can't regulate itself. What it can do is go into a more extreme form of dysregulation called its dorsal vagal complex, where we essentially leave our body or shut down. And so the baby might be quiet, but they're more catatonic. They're not actually regulated. And so anyway, my point is, we don't have the ability to self-regulate. We are entirely reliant on the adults around us and their nervous systems. And for most of us, and a lot of people here didn't have, like I had a very, very dangerous home, a lot of abuse, a lot of neglect. But a lot of people had wonderful, loving parents who didn't understand this. So they didn't have regulation in their own nervous system. And the result of that is a secure attachment becomes inhibited. So some of us had caregivers who, in our earliest childhood experiences, because of their own dysregulation in their nervous system, sent us the messaging, verbal and nonverbal messaging, that as we are alone, we aren't okay by ourselves, essentially. So there's a number of reasons why this transpires, but the caregiver is on again, off again in their ability to attune with us, create safety and connection for us. Our nervous system becomes hyper-focused on the other and says, I have to make sure you're okay in order for me to be okay. Because if you're regulated, then I'm regulated. And also from receiving verbal and nonverbal messages from caregivers that we aren't okay by ourselves. And this creates this and many other reasons creates something called an anxious attachment, where I don't feel okay by myself. I don't know how to self-regulate. There's this experience of I need another person to be safe. So I'm going to be overly focused on the other person. I'm going to disregard my own needs, my own truth. I'm going to contort myself to become what I think you want me to be in order to ensure the connection at all costs. And that's really love from survival, not love from choice. And here's the thing, the vehicle responsible for creating that experience is the autonomic nervous system. We use this state, are called our sympathetic nervous system, for anxiously attached because that's mobilizing. So it's all about the doing. And I have a lot of anxiety and worry and frustration and fear, and I have racing thoughts, and I just need to make sure that you're close to me because if you're close to me, I'm okay. Now, just really quickly, if we have an avoidant attachment, that's a result of having caregivers who were either neglectful or dangerous to us. Our nervous system learns that we have to go it alone because I can't regulate myself. And the other option is to be with this perpetual dysregulation. So we almost like become an island. And we resource something called our dorsal vagal complex, our state of shutdown, where apathy, hopelessness, depression lives, but also where we can be disconnected from our needs, our feelings, and the need or desire for connection. So the system we use is that state of shutdown. And so for us in our adult lives, I deeply want connection, but it feels overwhelming for me. So I'm met with this longing for it, but inability to step towards it. Or when a rupture occurs, I just shut down. All of that is occurring inside of my nervous system. That's the vehicle doing the relating. And then lastly, if I have a disorganized attachment, it's a result of caregivers who are sometimes safe, sometimes dangerous. My system deeply desires connection as a primal human need, met with the push away of it because I don't know if you're going to be safe or not. And so I have people come close, but when they get close, I reflexively push them away. All of that behavioral experience is informed by our nervous system. And we resource a state in our nervous system called freeze, which is a combination of equal parts our sympathetic nervous system and our state of shutdown or dorsal vagal complex. You think of that like a deer in headlights. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that the system that is responsible for our relating is our autonomic nervous system. So that means if I don't understand this system, if I'm not in the driver's seat of it, then that means that the system doing the relating in my relationships is not me, it's my nervous system. And the way it's deciding how to relate is through that database or through that blueprint. And lastly, here in terms of parts work, when I have experiences in a relationship where, I'm going to give a simple example here, actually from my own life. Because of all of the abuse and neglect that I experienced, I had to really certainly go it alone in my life when the experience as a child of deeply desiring to be chosen wasn't met. So I learned to fortify in a way. And so when I got into an adult relationships, like romantic relationships, let's say there was a moment where something exciting was happening, I don't know, maybe in my work or something like that, I would say, okay, I want to tell you about this thing, which felt like a really big stretch for my system because historically speaking, that wasn't safe. So I might have a really loving partner, but when I go to share with them, let's say that they looked down at their phone as I was sharing because it vibrated or something like that, not a great thing to do, but they're not my really, I don't use this word lightly, but narcissistic mother or my very dangerous abusive stepfather. He wasn't that, or any partner I had. He just was very human and did something that maybe wasn't great. We should have no phones in the room when we're sharing vulnerably. But to my threat detector, it looked to that experience and says, what intel do we have on me being vulnerable and the person disconnecting? And it quickly looked to the database and said, this reminds me of childhood. And that was a really painful experience. We don't want you to have to experience that again. So in a millisecond, this all happened subconsciously, it would bring me to my state of shutdown. And it was like there was a steel wall in front of me. And it was not letting him near me again. And the thoughts would come because the thoughts are created by the state where I would say things like, I don't trust you. I don't need anybody. And energetically, I was not open for business at all and was saying, I'm not going to let you near me again because I don't want to be hurt like that. And in that moment, it's almost like adult us flies out the window. So me, that sees the present moment and is here and is capable and able and safe, leaves the building. And whatever the threat detector was reminded of from my childhood, that numeric age or that part inhabits my system, which is why in that moment, I wasn't actually in, the year 2000. I was in the year 1986 and I wasn't here. And so I felt small and scared and out of control. I wasn't in Los Angeles where I live. I was in New Hampshire in that really dangerous house. And that part was inhabiting my body. And that means the perception of the entire experience was through that part. And this is why so much of the time we're in relationships and you might have moments where you feel like you've everything feels really clear and good. And then some kind of rupture occurs and all of that goes out the window and I don't feel like myself. And then I do things or say things or behave in a way that later I think, why did I do that or behave in this way? And this is all because of these three different, very important modalities that are all interconnected in how we experience our relational dynamics.
Listen, I didn't take insurance in my counseling practice because I had no idea how to handle it. The process of accepting insurance outside of a group practice can be tough, but most people looking for mental health care want to use their benefits to pay for sessions. If you're like me and you feel a little scared about taking insurance or you just want to make it easier on yourself and you're interested in seeing clients through insurance, Alma can help. They make it easy to get credentialed with major insurance plans at enhanced reimbursement rates. They also handle all the paperwork from eligibility checks to claim submission and guaranteed payment within 2 weeks. Plus, when you join Alma, you'll get access to time-saving tools for intake, scheduling, treatment plans, progress notes, and more in their included platform. It's going to make it so much easier for your team, so you can spend less time on administrative work and more time offering great care to your clients. Visit helloalma.com/Joe. That's helloalma.com/Joe to get started. Now, how do we, as that's happening, what are some practical things that, whether it's with friends or with a spouse or a partner, that we can do to, like, what are best practices in when we recognize that triggering happening?
Mm. So I would say, the foundational thing here, before even getting to the trigger point, which I'll get to in just one second, is we really need to understand and gain control of our nervous system. So foundational and so important. And the more that we do that, the more we can really understand in a felt sense way, what does it feel like when adult me is in my body? And what does it feel like when a part or a younger part is in my body? And a really simple practice that I invite when I'm working with people to do is, and by the way, we can't think our way into this, we have to experience it, is either recalling a moment where we felt really regulated or really present, which could be like a moment in nature or a moment experience an activity we love, or maybe in our work. That can be a place where our adult self is really present when we're in flow. And I invite people to really feel into somatically, what does this feel like when adult me is here? What does it feel like? So notice the sensations, notice the feelings, and even write that down, because this is almost like our encyclopedia or our Bible for understanding who's in the driver's seat of me. And then I even invite people to ask themselves from this lens, because our nervous system creates our perception, ask myself, okay, in terms of my romantic relationship or even friendships or with colleagues, how do I perceive or view this person? What do I know is true about them from here? And actually write those things down. Because this is it's almost like our voice of clarity or our voice of truth. Here's what's actually true. And then when we get into, an argument or a rupture, I really invite you to look at that list of sensations and feelings. What's it like to be in my body? And what are the thoughts and is the perception? And ask myself, is that who's in my body right now? Or is it someone else? And more often than not, it's someone else. Now, a lot of times, it's the reason I ask people to do this is because a lot of times it's what are often called self-like parts. So we can really think it's adult us. Like when I gave that example for myself, that part of me wasn't saying seemingly illogical things. It felt in the moment really true and really logical. But the truth is, the felt sense experience of me when I'm in me is there's a softness and an openness. There is not black and white, all or nothing, rigidity, harshness energetically. That's not me. That's a protective part of me. And so the more that I could understand that's our first catching point. Like, okay, this isn't adult me. So based on that, I need to, in this moment, go get adult me back and regulate my nervous system before I come back to repair. So Deb Dana is a friend and mentor of mine. She says this a lot. She says, years ago when I met her with a bunch of clinicians, she was training us. She said, if the clinician, therapist, practitioner, whatever, is not in regulation, stop the session because there's no one here to help. And I know that's like a really tall order for helping professionals. She doesn't mean, of course, end the session altogether, but what she means is if someone in the room if there isn't someone who's in regulation, then there's nobody who can bring the other nervous system towards regulation. And so it means, hey, together maybe we can do something in this moment to regulate our nervous system, use some somatic tools. Now, relationally, in our personal lives, it does mean that if both parties are dysregulated, we are not going to be able to make our way back to connection or regulation, because in that moment, our nervous systems are both superimposing the past on the present, meaning seeing past relationships, past marriages, childhoods, putting them onto the other person. And it's like we have swords out fighting each other. And so that's why a little argument can become a really big one if we try to continue to be in the argument from a place of dysregulation. It just escalates. So instead, what we want to do is have a rule relationally when we're both triggered, we pause and we both go to regulate. And if you're more anxiously attached, you're going to probably want to go regulate with another human being or an animal even. But I need to go regulate. We both go regulate. And if you're avoidant, I tend to pull away. The job of the person who's avoidant is to say, can we come check back in 20 minutes, half hour? And we check back in and see, are we more regulated now? And once we're both regulated and I've look at that checklist and I say, yep, adult me is back. I'm seeing my partner clearly now. Then we can repair. But that is really, really vital. And the more that we can have an understanding of what is it like to be me versus what does it feel like to be those dysregulated self-protective parts, the more I'm actually in the driver's seat of my relationships and can have relationships that are filled with ease rather than recapitulating the past and the present.
I love that. The last question I ask, Sarah, is if every private practitioner in the world were listening right now, what would you want them to know?
Two things. The first is thank you for devoting your life to helping the world heal and helping human beings to become who they have always been and come back into who they've always been and live the life they're here to live. I think it's one of the most heroic things that we can possibly do. And the importance of, so many of us come into this work because we had a role in our lives of being a caretaker. And so just the importance of two things, of making sure that we're from a place of service, not sacrifice. And that requires doing our own work to come into that, but that I am here to serve, not to serve at the detriment to me. And then lastly is the embodying of the work. The more that we embody the work, the more that we lay a trail, a path for others to walk down with us and beside us as we are helping. And so that embodiment of the work is just as important as the clinical work itself.
So awesome. And Sarah, if people want to follow your work, if they want to learn more from you, where should we send them?
I have a lot of free resources. You can find me on my website, sarahbaldwincoaching.com. I have free quiz on the nervous system to understand what state you live in predominantly. I also have some free workbooks. And then I have a podcast called You Make Sense. You can find that on Apple and Spotify or Instagram. Sarah B Coaching is my handle.
So awesome. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I love that idea of, how are we feeling in regards to our own regulation in a session, but then to also equate that to when we're when we're in a discussion or fight or frustrating moment with someone we love, whether that's a friend or a partner or child, to just notice, like, is there an adult in the room, or have we both regressed to something that was triggering or something in our nervous system that we need a break? I think, to me, we hear, take a break, or, the Gottmans might speak about that, or, other trainers. But to really think of it from a nervous system standpoint, that we need to get back into our brain that loves this person and that wants to go deeper. And what a great skill to teach our therapy clients, and to be able to dig deeper and to be able to explain it now that we have this, master class that Sarah just taught us. So go implement this in your sessions, but even more importantly, master it and use it in your own personal life. Also, we have experts like Sarah and other types of people that are experts in so many different areas that come into our communities to teach us about clinical things, but also business things. So if that sounds like something that you're interested in, head on over to practiceofthepractice.com/membership. We have our membership community there with all of the different tracks that you can read about. It's just a great way to connect with other people, get education, and move forward faster within your private practice. Thank you so much to Alma for being our sponsor today. I wish Alma had been around when I had my private practice. I had no idea what I was doing. That's why I didn't take insurance. But if Alma had been there, I would have. And there's no reason that as a clinician, you should be spending hours on paperwork to bill for insurance, or not knowing for sure that you'll get reimbursed for sessions with your clients. If you're interested in seeing clients through insurance, but don't want to navigate the process and paperwork on your own, Alma can help. They make it easy to get credentialed with major insurance plans at enhanced reimbursement rates and a guaranteed payment within 2 weeks. Visit helloalma.com/Joe. That's hello, ALMA.com/Joe to get started. Thank you so much for letting me into your ears and into your brain. Have a great day. I'll talk to you soon. Special thanks to the band Silence is Sexy for that intro music, and this podcast is designed to provide accurate and authoritative information in regard to the subject matter covered. It is given with the understanding that neither the host, the producers, the publishers, or guests are rendering legal, accounting, clinical, or other professional information. If you want a professional, you should find one.